On September 24, 1942, inside Hitler's East Prussian headquarters, one German general dared to speak the truth that no one else would. Franz Halder, chief of the German General Staff, calmly told Hitler that the campaign in Stalingrad was doomed by mathematics, not morale. Within minutes, he was dismissed, his warning silenced by rage. Yet 8 weeks later, every word he spoke became horrifying reality. This is the real story of the man who challenged ideology with logic and paid for it with his career while hundreds of thousands paid with their lives. Franz Halder was born in 1884 into a family steeped in military service. His career rose steadily through the disciplined, analytical traditions of the Bavarian army. By 1938, he had become chief of the German General Staff, a position once reserved for the most brilliant strategists of Prussia. During the early victories of Nazi Germany, Poland, Norway, France, Halder's precision and organizational genius made him indispensable. Yet even in triumph, he felt unease. Hitler, a soldier only by title, had begun overruling professionals with his instincts and ideology. The military machine that once functioned on discipline and data was being replaced by fanaticism and faith. In 1941, as Operation Barbarossa prepared for launch, Halder repeatedly warned Hitler and the high command about logistical limits. He knew that sustaining an army of millions across the vast expanses of the Soviet Union required far more fuel, trucks, and railroads than Germany possessed. "An army marches on its stomach," Halder quoted Napoleon, but Hitler scoffed. He told his generals, "The coming war will be one of wills, not supplies." Barbarossa's early victories blinded the Führer to reality. The Wehrmacht captured millions of Soviet soldiers, but the front kept extending. Halder noted grimly in his diary, "Every step forward makes us weaker." By winter 1941, fuel and food were gone, the troops freezing before Moscow, and the fantasy of a quick victory shattered. Inside Hitler's headquarters, a culture of fear took hold. Those who reported bad news were branded defeatists. General Guderian was dismissed, and others stopped speaking plainly. Halder, however, continued to present accurate assessments. He saw morale dropping and supply lines collapsing, but each meeting devolved into Hitler's rants about betrayal and weakness. The dictator wanted miracles. Halder brought numbers. As 1942 began, Hitler shifted focus to the south, to seize the oil fields of the Caucasus and the symbolic Soviet city of Stalingrad. To him, Stalingrad was destiny. To Halder, it was a trap. The seeds of their final confrontation were sown. The morning was silent and cold at Hitler's East Prussian headquarters. Around the oak table sat Germany's highest officers, Keitel, Jodl, Zeitzler, waiting as Halder rose to deliver his briefing. His tone was factual, clinical. "My Führer, the 6th Army requires 700 tons of supplies daily," he stated. "Current delivery averages only 300, and falling." He outlined the danger: exhausted troops, long supply lines, Soviets gathering for a counteroffensive, weak Romanian and Italian flanks. "I recommend consolidation and preparation for winter defenses." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Hitler erupted. "You dare to recommend retreat? You, who have doubted every victory. Wars are won by faith, not arithmetic." Halder calmly replied, "Faith cannot move supplies across the steppe." The words hung in the air like a sentence. Hitler slammed his fist on the table and barked, "You are relieved of duty, effective immediately." Halder removed his insignia, saluted, and left, knowing his career was over. Within hours, General Kurt Zeitzler was appointed Halder's replacement. Younger, optimistic, and seemingly aggressive, he reassured Hitler that Stalingrad could still be won. But reality ignored loyalty. In November 1942, the Red Army unleashed Operation Uranus, striking precisely where Halder had predicted. The Romanian and Italian lines collapsed within days, and 284,000 German troops were trapped in Stalingrad. The Luftwaffe promised resupply by air, but delivered only a fraction, 100 to 150 tons a day, far short of the required 700. Men froze, starved, and died in rubble. Requests to break out were denied. Hitler's order was absolute. Hold your ground, Stalingrad must stand. It did not. By February 1943, the Sixth Army surrendered. Halder followed these events from forced retirement. Every statistic, every warning he had given was now verified by tragedy. In his private journals he wrote, "We lost not to the Soviets but to our own delusion." Yet even vindicated, Halder felt no triumph, only sorrow. His firing sent a message throughout the army. Truth was treason. Honest generals were removed. Loyalists were promoted. After the Stalingrad disaster, Germany's strategic discussions became empty rituals of obedience. No one dared present facts. Later, when Hitler refused retreats in 1943 and 1944, hundreds of thousands more would die for illusions. Halder was later arrested in 1944 after the failed July 20th attempt to assassinate Hitler, though he had played no role. Imprisoned in Dachau, he survived until liberation in 1945. In American custody, the once feared chief of staff became a historian. His war journals served as primary documents for post-war studies and trials. He described how the German general staff turned into an echo chamber of fear, where facts were replaced by fantasy and disagreement was branded betrayal. Historians came to see in Halder's dismissal the beginning of the German army's intellectual death. Franz Halder lived until 1972, long enough to see Germany rebuilt and his warnings vindicated in history books. Yet he also lived with mixed emotions. He had spoken truth about Stalingrad, but stayed silent about Hitler's crimes against civilians. Still, his courage during that September morning in 1942 stood as a symbol of professional integrity. The firing of Halder marked not just the silencing of one man, but the triumph of ideology over intellect. From that moment on, the German military ceased to think, only to obey. The tragedy of Stalingrad, the disaster of the Eastern Front, and ultimately the collapse of Hitler's empire were all rooted in that fatal choice. When Germany fired its best general for being right,